Da 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 da. What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never met me before, I am Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. Today was an outside day. I had chores to do. Didn't know I had chores to do, but I'm grateful to be able to have chores to do today. Today was my sister's birthday, and it was because they live in the same building, two of my sisters. It was an opportunity to go visit another one of my sisters that I haven't been seeing much, over the past few years. I'm going to tell you the truth. Me and my sister Tracy, we were best friends, right? We were confidants. We were partners in crime. And, we are the opposites of each other in a lot of ways. In a lot of ways. Hello, Tammy. And when I woke up to some of my ideas and my life started going down the toilet, and that's usually how it works. It's an opportunity for you to clean house, right? To take a look at how you messed up. If you want to, if you don't, you can ride those scary waves. You can ride those scary waves. And I can tell you, they're scary, they're heartbreaking. And in my experience, I delved in head deep. I didn't know really what I was in for, but I feel that something in me was up for the challenge. And because I found myself a little bit of secluded in the experience, I kind of attached it to my brand. Curiously, that's what I did. And I moved in that. And I allowed myself to be drawn. You guys hear me all the time talk about being willing to expand, right? Sometimes we can't get off the couch with the remote control ourselves. But if I tell you, if somebody lit a firecracker underneath that couch, you would be moving. And it's kind of that idea. If you don't make that movement is going to happen, and it's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be heartbreaking. It might be full of grief, frustration, and especially fear, right? And I know this by experience, not my experience. Lots of times, well, some of it my experience too. But to kind of have an inkling of what's going on. And even if I didn't have an inkling, I kind of had a trust that if I just rode those waves, if I adapted and conquered, if I used those lessons that I've been picking up along the way, and you guys know I delve into mindset quite a bit. So when I was talking yesterday that I am normally a very positive person, I am, right? But if I didn't have those lessons in mindset, if I didn't have that understanding in the end that everything was going to be okay, even if in the moment it was very scary, frustrating, scary, right? Heartbreaking. I moved. And because I moved, those yanks became pulls. They became pushes, right? They didn't become true. Well, in the beginning, they did, right? Because I wasn't too aware of what was going on. So, of course, in not being able to hold jobs, in being so in my head and in my emotions, and being by myself and finding that those relationships in my life were kind of being taken out, literally, including that really tight relationship that I was having with my sister. in that process of me having that experience, my sister was having her own experience. And it's right, we won't delve into it too much, but it's important because her experience is part of my experience, it's part of my lessons, it's part of my understandings. And it's important for people to understand when they find themselves in that situation, when your life is falling apart, when things are just so mixed up, when you're kind of nervous, where your body is just agitated, you don't know where the next shoe is going to drop. You have to understand that's part of the process. That's the readjustment. And that's what's asking us to ride those waves, to adapt and conquer, to stretch ourselves, to allow ourselves to accommodate that happening, right? But like I said, my sister's going through the same experience because she's not woke up to any of these ideas. Not to my understanding. My sister's a very private person, but not to my understanding. So I'm going to take it at face value that she just really doesn't understand what's happening, right? But it's the same process, but she's not riding those waves. She's not adapting and conquering. She's enduring, and she's not picking up any lessons in the process. And it's been a very scary process for her, a very painful process for her, but I'm a true believer that she is going to come out of it better than ever, right? Her goals are not set like my goals are. I want to share these experiences with people so that when they get in those experiences, they'll be able to maneuver them a little bit better. And not only maneuver them a little bit better, ride those waves, maybe even possibly, right? Because it's all in the attitude. When you stay in that scared, frustrated, agitated mindset, it's really hard to get anything good to come in, anything positive. And in most cases, you're fighting. I say I push back at what pushes at me, right? But I do it with like a challenge, right? I do it with gumption and optimistic attitude, right? I'm not doing anything that I know is going to be detrimental, right? And yeah, my youngest sister's birthday today, so I went and wrapped her up a present and took it over, and she really loved her presents. And I took over a few things for my other sister Tracy, and I took something over for my niece, right? But the positive attitude, right? To be able to make yourself as comfortable as you can in the process, and to trust and to believe and to be optimistic that everything is going to be okay. I went over today. I did my cheerleading. I did my little bit of kissing the boo boo, right? A little bit of, that empathy. And it did hurt me to see the the sadness, right? And the sadness and knowing that, I can be there, right? I can be that shoulder for her, but I can't do the work. And how do I explain to her? Because she already thinks I'm a little bit preachy in the process. How do I explain to her what's actually going on, right? What's actually going on? And yeah, Tabby, if you want to throw my sister Tracy a little prayer tonight, she could use it 100%. She could use it 100%. But it was a beautiful day. It was a beautiful day. I did a little housework for her because she's stuck in a cast, right? She broke her foot and she walked on it for a few weeks, and she didn't take care of herself in that process. So she's getting a new cast, a hard cast because she's in a boot right now. She's going to get a hard cast on Monday, and then I'm going to go visit her once or twice a week and see if that will make a difference, in her mindset. Right? I'm not it's not right. We're only responsible for our own actions, our own thoughts, our own emotions, and I'm not going to push them on her. Like I said, she already thinks I'm a little bit preachy in that. But I think, if I'm not over exuberant, if I'm not super positive. I'll be positive about the situation, but that natural positivity that I have about myself, that can be agitating for people who are not feeling well, right? And I recognize that, and I recognize that trait in my sister. So I don't want to agitate her, but I think my presence will do a little bit of good. And I've never really had her, uh, you know. My sister Alice, if you've watched some of my videos, you will have met my sister Alice. And if you've come into my lives, she pops in um, um, unannounced sometimes, and she comes up to the camera and she says hi to everybody. So you guys have met my sister Alice. But my sister Tracy, she was a big part of my story, and I would really like to her to be a bigger part of my story. But right, I'm feeling better, more grounded myself, more adjusted, right? I'm at that state where I feel that I'm a whole lot more adjusted. And a lot of that hairy scary I avoided by making that movement forward myself through my own choices, right? My own actions, and understanding in my emotions that in that, yes, it's not going to be fun, right? But it's much better if I do the work than something or someone else comes in and does that readjustment like a back cracker, right? If you guys have ever gone to chiropractors and you just go, ah, right? And get that adjustment. I'd much rather just have like a little massage, get through it, smile through it, understand, the the lessons, ride those waves, adapt and conquer, right? And survive it, but not just survive it, right? Not just survive it. Yeah. She's going to do good. She's going to do good. And that, because we had a talk a little bit about today without a conversation, nothing preachy, right? But I think that I'm going to spend a little bit more time with her. I know that, you know, something will come of it. It'll make it a little bit easier. I was the sunshine in her life for a very, very long time. But when the sunshine went away, right, I kind of went away too. I kind of went my own way. And I'm grateful. I'm not regretting that in any way because it was necessary for me. 100%. Like, I don't regret it. I would do it 100 times again, right? And I have my life for myself for the very first time in my entire life. Now, is it popcorn and rainbows and cotton candy? honestly, sometimes, right? Sometimes it is. And I'm doing a lot of good for myself in my own mindset. Like, if Tammy, you've seen me in my first videos, you saw me in that hairy, scary. Like, it really was very, very uncomfortable in the process. But like I said, because I had those tools, I had some lessons under my belt, and I never stopped taking the lessons. It's because I incorporated it into my brand, right? In keeping my brand going and understanding I never give up. I find a way. And this channel, right, has done so much in keeping me grounded in that movement forward. I am forever grateful that I became a YouTube creator. And like I said, I would never, never, right, wish to go back to the old life that I had because, of course, there was cotton candy and sprinkles in that life too, but we were all bringing each other down, right? I come from a very dynamic family, right? Of borderlines and empaths and codependents and narcissists and controllers, right? You know, uh, and there's nothing wrong with controlling your own life. And, I've gotten myself to that point, to that stage in my life that I can feel comfortable in that control and not feel like I'm being demanding or it's my way or the highway, that I haven't lost that softness in myself, that I'm still caring and loving. I'm still a part of that family, and that family's still a part of me, and it so easily could have been a different story. Lots of people just write their families off and off they go. And sometimes it's necessary to do that, right? But in that determination, in that never giving up, you find a way to make it work. And we don't have all the answers, right? None of us have all the answers. But I'm not willing to give up on what never gave up on me, right? What never gave up on me. When I'm down, right? I'm lifted in those relationships, in just having relationships. It's important for us to have relationships. And relationships are not always perfect. Very rarely are they perfect. But this world has come to a point where it allows us to, somebody to tick you off once and you go, okay, see you on the beach. Nice knowing ya, right? Or not nice knowing ya. Don't ever speak to me again, right? And, we have to put the effort in, right? Nobody is perfect, right? And when life is going down the tubes, we all scramble for those lifelines. I was there, right? In my days of gambling, in those days when my marriage fell apart, in the days when I couldn't hold on to a job anymore, if my life depended on it. I didn't know what was going on with my life, but something was going on with my life until I understood what was going on with my life. And I was able to stabilize in that. And I was able to hold on to that softness and bring down those traits that we pick up from our surroundings, right? We are a little bit of whoever we surround ourselves with. That I picked up those narcissistic traits too. And then to recognize what they were and to be able to mellow out to a point of control. And control for me is a very good thing. We should have control. That's what makes us get to that point where we can self parent, that we can hold ourselves accountable, not to use that control on other people. And that's where some members of my family, they get it wrong, right? Is that control. They don't understand. They can't control others. People are going to want to hang with you or they're not going to want to hang with you, right? People are going to, you know, move out of your life, right? They are. People normally don't stay forever. Like I said, the world is now set up in a way that relationships come and go more often, right? Than they stay. And that's a truth. And that's not really something I think that is working out too well. But I think, right, we're recognizing what we're not getting right. Which reminds me something interesting. I was watching an interview today with, is he a scientist? Yes, I think he's an archaeological scientist. He's an anthropology, I think, is the category, because I remembered, it was, I thought this would be something I would be interested in understanding, is mankind in a different part of history going back. And for me, it's going way, way back to like the caveman, right? Neanderthals and Homo erectus, and right, the archaic humans, Denisovans. Like, I just am absolutely fascinated because that is our history going all the way back. And when we talk about science and discovery, that is a category that's fairly new, right? Denisovan has only been, well, it's only been like 5 years maybe that it actually has been, what do you call that? Authorized discovery, where the science has already been done and they've given out the papers, and right. Um, and this gentleman was a researcher. He calls it thinking. These days, I'm thinking about, and that's, he kept saying that, right, in every topic that he got on. But he was talking about natural selection. Now, I'm not an expert, so don't take anything as 100% truth out of my mouth, because I'm just kind of deciphering it in layman's terms. But they're already categorized 100 natural selections that are moving forward, that are moving forward. Um, Now, he gave some examples too off the top of my mind so that you can understand even what I'm talking about when I talk about natural selections. Here's one. Never in history, when it came to natural selection, has intelligence ever been considered something important about people in evolution moving forward. This is the very first time in history that intelligence is a factor in those humans that are going to be moving forward into, like Neanderthals, Denisovans, Homo sapiens, which are us or were us. I think we're in that process of changing right now. And it's because distinctly we are more intelligent now. But intelligence has never been taken into consideration, right? Warriors, hunters, farmers, right? Religious, having a religion or faith. these were categories in moving forward. They were kind of survival traits, weren't they? But right now, because of this digital age, that in natural selection, education is going to be a factor in mankind's evolution, meaning how important it is that we all become not super brainiacs, but to move in that, right? To be able to handle the technology, because otherwise we're going to be left to the wayside. And I kind of get that because, my mother hated technology. My dad loved technology. The 7 foot high speakers and the amps with all the dials, right? The space age TVs, even though they were still about that fat, right? Now they're all flat screens, right? Like he loved technology, but my mother could not stand it. And I remember when we got her first universal remote so that she could use her VHS machine and her TV and whatever, and her Nintendo machine that she bought for the grandkids and stuff, right? So that she could do that all from the remote control. And we gave her that. Well, I didn't give it to her. My sister Tracy gave it to her as a Christmas present in her stocking. And my mother like looked at it and she's like angry. She goes, "What's this? What are you guys giving me this for?" She was so angry that she actually took this remote control and she threw it at the living room wall. I can't remember if she broke it. I'm assuming that she did, right? But she did not like technology. So my mother would not be moving forward. She would be off to the wayside. And because I believe that the other parts of us are coming back, if our other parts of us is in our intelligence, right? Which is quite possible, those other parts are intelligent because I'm allowing them to lead me, and it's gotten me to this point right now. So I have to understand, right, that they are intelligent, that my mother's other parts didn't have that opportunity to learn. She was maybe thriving in other aspects. So I forgot to say also that our bodies, our health, right? That there are diseases out there that are being wiped out that we're just not going to get anymore. And so when I say I'm grateful for my good health, like I've never had a headache in my entire life, never had a bleeding nose. I do get aches and pains, right? On occasion, like today when I was walking and my feet hurt because I tried my new shoes out. It was my first time trying out my shoes, but I knew I had to go for a walk in them. If they're going to be my walking shoes, I got to know if they're comfortable, because if they're not comfortable, then I do need a good pair of walking shoes, right? I'm getting too mature. I like that word mature, not old. I like that word mature. I'm getting too mature to be wearing flat sandals. They're not good for my feet. You guys know I pay attention to my physical well being because I want to be that person to be swimming and walking and hiking and riding my bike when I'm 80 years old. In this age of technology that we have now, not necessarily the age of AI learning, but this age of technology, because all aspects, medicine and science and space and the ocean. Do you know that we have only explored less than 5% of the ocean floor? 5%. That's absolutely just crazy. We've pretty much explored the entire world now. There are very few places that have not been explored, right? Very few places. Now, there are places that no man has set foot in, but I'm talking about the vicinities of it, right? But that's part of natural selection too, that somewheres, not now, not this moment, but there are things. We're getting a handle on cancer, we're getting a handle on Parkinson's disease, sickle cell anemia. The first person has gotten totally cured of it. People with cystic fibrosis are living into adulthood now, which was a rarity, right? That there are so many diseases out there that we're getting a handle on, or we're wiping them out, right? I was going to say smallpox, but smallpox has resurfaced because lots of parents have decided not to vaccinate the children, right? So it makes sense that some of these diseases do resurface. And then again, there are some diseases that we created. Like I had, what was that illness I had when I first woke up? Oh my goodness, that threw me out for a loop. Uh, it was from it was from chickenpox when I was a little kid. Um, Shingles. I got shingles. But that is created because of the vaccination, right? Oh no, it wasn't. It was caused. Yeah, it was caused. I'm trying to think. It was caused by the vaccination for chickenpox. So we wouldn't get chickenpox. We got cowpox. They gave us a little dose of cowpox. And because that pox was in our system, that we got shingles. And they say that 50% of people who got the vaccination for chickenpox get shingles. Yeah, and I had shingles. And I knew something was wrong. Oh my goodness, my back killed me for 2 weeks. It was the most excruciating pain. And I had researched everything. You guys know I love being online. I like doing the Googling, right? But I knew something was wrong. And I came across the topic of shingles, but they said shingles appears as a rash in a straight line, right? And I couldn't see any lines on my back in any way, and I had this excruciating pain. I went to the doctor. The doctor didn't see anything either. So I went home, and then a few days later, there was the line all across my back up into my shoulder, and it just burst. Like, it was just the worst little rash. It was long and skinny, but it was so painful. I went straight back to the doctor that very same day, because every day I checked, because I said it has to be shingles, right? It has to be shingles. And sure enough, it was shingles. And he gave me a cream, and I used that cream right away, and that rash did not get any worse. If I hadn't gone to see the doctor that day, I would have been in really, really bad shape. It was sore after that for a couple of weeks. He gave me some kind of shot. I don't know what it was for a couple of weeks. And I was fine after that. After a while, it was just a little bit of ache. But that pain in the beginning was something else. And that came from the vaccination. So some of these illnesses that we get are created by us, right? Just like the stress creates 75% of our illnesses. But technically, that stress we create, right? So when I was talking about, I kind of owned through the whole process, that I grounded myself. I used mindset, stayed positive, and worked on my brand and kept my channel going, kept myself busy. And in that, I grew, and I was able to incorporate that whole experience into my brand. And of course, I seemed a little bit kooky to some, but that's okay because it's my experience, right? And I incorporated it into my brand. And it served me well. And it's something that is manageable. But when you don't know what's going on, when you're kind of clueless or you don't want to admit it, right? You don't want to stretch, you don't want to expand in that, you don't want to make any movement to yourself because it's too painful, right? That it does become a problem, right? Because it's in our attitudes. Lots of times, I think my good health, a lot of my good health comes from my own perspective on my life and on the way I think and on the way that I feel and in that mindset, right? I've always had good health even before I had mindset, even before I heard the word mindset and knew what it was. I always had that good attitude, but I was determined to create the best life for myself as I possibly could, right? I wasn't growing at the time, but I was making sure that everything was good, that I was having fun. Not like I was taking care of myself at that point. That came after the mindset, right? But, knowing and having those lessons and those tools made the process so much easier. And I didn't misstep. I didn't bypass in any of the lessons. If anything, I took in a lot more than I needed to, but no more than what I wanted to. And that's the truth. Let me come back in here. Um, Okay, sure, Cindy. I will say a prayer tonight for Tracy and we'll keep her in my prayers. Thank you so much, Tammy. I really appreciate it. I can send Tracy my good cheer. I can be there, right? Like I can be there, but I know my other parts might be there too, right? Doing their own thing. So, we'll get Tracy through this process too, right? But again, we can only in the end make sure that we are okay. And yeah, I felt really bad for her. She's really sad. She feels really trapped in her house, right? So I'm gonna spend a little bit of time with her over the next couple of weeks, few weeks at the very least. Go over once or twice a week, at the very least, and spend a little time with her, right? Maybe I can get something through to her, right? It's not fair to do that work for someone, on someone, without their understanding, because if you do that, that's manipulation, right? So I would much rather be the example in my own experience that maybe she might try out some of these techniques that I picked up along the way to make it a little bit easier for her because it started the same time as when mine started. But yeah, right, it's tough, it's tough to see that, right? But she's my sister, so I'm just going to kind of ride those waves myself. Okay, I personally think that you're doing good and that you are grounded and doing very good. Thank you, Tammy. I appreciate that you say that. I feel like you are giving Tracy good cheer right now, Cindy. I am proud of you. Aw, I know it's not always easy. Yeah, I have been somebody in creating the best life for myself. Um, I always wanted to enjoy my life. I knew I only had one shot at it, and I wanted to have the best life that I could, even though the circumstances didn't always serve me that way. And always because, I wanted everybody else to enjoy their life too. That's where my caregiving kind of came in. And I can know that you might appreciate that being a caregiver yourself, Tammy, right? And it makes you sad when you can do well for yourself and somebody else is not doing so well. We had that conversation today, me and her. I said, Tracy, it's not like my life is just perfect. lots of times it's just in my attitude and in just being positive, even though things are going on or not going on, right? I says, we all have problems. We just have different problems, right? She goes, oh, you're right, Cindy. So that was just a conversation, and it got through to her in that. But getting through is not enough. You got to put these ideas into action, right? And I think maybe, if I spend a little bit more time with her, right? Keep her company, not keep her company in her misery, right? But go there and be optimistic. Maybe we can play cribbage. We can have some of these talks, right? We can sit out in her balcony. I don't have a balcony. I go for walks, but I enjoyed sitting out on her balcony today, talking to her. It was lovely. We looked at the clouds, waiting for the rain to come. It was supposed to be kind of a rainy, miserable day today, and it was absolutely beautiful. It was warm. It was sunny, like beautiful sunny with periods of clouds, big fluffy clouds too. Some of them black, some of them pitch white. Just kind of a beautiful day. The breeze and everything. It was beautiful, right? Then I went and managed to pick up a few groceries. That was nice. And yeah, I came home and I was pooped. I was wiped. But it's a good wiped, right? Because I know it went to a good place. It was being served, right? It was being served. I know I come in here and I serve, but to be able to do it in person with somebody, like to see the impact in that does something for me too, right? Rather than just having a conversation, somebody goes off and then you don't see them and you don't know what's been going on. And I was actually could feel and experience the uplift in the moment, right? So it's worth it 100%. Um Yeah, it is interesting. Natural selection, it's happening right now. They've been studying it, and they've got about 100 natural selections that they're looking at right now. That the next stage of evolution, they're not prerequisites. Not everybody is going to have them, right? But they are going to be important for survival in that movement forward, right? We are going to get to the stage where there is no illness. Isn't that amazing? It's not going to be in our lifetime, but you can see some of it working already. And it's exciting to think maybe the grandkids or the great grandkids are going to have that opportunity to live well into their hundreds. Even right now, people are living into their hundreds. You know, in the early 1800s, the average age of a human being was 45 years old, right? And at 30 years old, you look like a really, really old person. But that was the physicality and the mentality and the emotionality of the battering that humans have been getting. And, like I say all the time, everybody talks about this being the worst time ever in history. No, it's not. It's not even close. It's different. It's only because there are so many generations in this lifetime right now. Right? I see pictures all the time of 5 different generations: great grandma, great grandma, great grandma, grandma, mom, and child. Oh, maybe grandchild. I haven't seen the 6 generations, but I've seen pictures of 5 generations, and each one of those generations, life was different, right? I grew up in the 60s and the 70s. That was certainly different than the generations that grew up in the 80s and 90s. And a good example of that is discrimination was still very prevalent in the 60s and 70s. Laws were in place, right? It wasn't tolerated, but it was still there. You still heard those nasty names. They still were kind of segregated socially, right? Even though they were going to the same schools and right, but they still didn't go to the same churches. They still didn't hang out as friends, even though I did have some friends, right? Yeah, Beverly Edwards. She was big black Amazon woman. I'll never forget her. She was so kind to me, but it didn't start out that way. Oh my goodness. She punched me every time she saw me, right? But in the end, she became a really, really good friend. And I hope her life is going really well. I hope her family is doing really, really well. Yeah. But in the 80s and 90s, there was so much culture in the classroom, every nationality going on in the classroom. And discrimination was nothing. Nobody even gave it a consideration anymore. That's evolution. That is moving forward. And that's natural selection is in those attitudes because any other attitude is just not tolerated, right? When it comes to discrimination anymore. Yeah, I'd like to know what those 100 specific natural selections are. I only caught a few of them. I could only remember the intelligence because they spent a little bit more time on that one because it was the very first time in history that intelligence was taken into consideration. Not to say that there wasn't intelligent people, right? Leonardo da Vinci and there were right lots of smart people in the past, but it wasn't the majority. It was kind of like the private club, right? Secret club. But maybe not. Just maybe something because they were so busy in survival, it wasn't a consideration. I mean, my mother only went to grade 7. You would be taken out of your home if you were not going to school in grade 7, right? You'd be put in a foster home for that. But in my mother's day and age, when she grew up, that was acceptable, right? And generation before her, lots of kids were pulled out of school, didn't even make it through grade school because, the parents needed them on the farm, right? In that survival. So I can see how intelligence wasn't a priority. It's something pretty new. I mean, even in the general public, I mean, when did the King James Version of the Bible come out, Tammy? Because the Bible wasn't for the public for the very longest time, right? It wasn't. And then the layman, the everyday man, got the Bible in their own hands and was able to be studious themselves. And then libraries came out, right? Then college was important and university was important. Well, they ended up being important because it turned out to be a business, right? It was a way to set power, right? It was all about the power and all about the money, you know. But times are changing. And like I said, it's in our free choice whether or not to pursue these things, right? You might grow up and say, well, I want to be a construction worker. You still have to learn what a ruler is and make calculations and know safety. There's still lots of topics that you need to be expert in that somebody who wants to be a baker, right, is going to have different skills that they need, right? And so instead of just being the expert in one and that was another thing they were talking about that people are no longer just being expertise in one topic. I think somebody tried to open up my door, but I have the lock on. And they're not just being expertise in one topic, they're being experts in many interests because the brain's expanding and we need to be entertained by that, right? And that's what it is. And it could also be an addiction too. I've taken that into consideration, right? I love learning. It's amazing. And I was the worst student ever. By the time I got into high school, I was skipping most of my classes, right? Yeah, it's the way it goes sometimes. Maybe I was meant to be an entrepreneur. But if that was the case, I don't know. I think I'm failing in the moment in that, right? But there are lots of things in my life that I'm not failing. And it's only because I'm willing. I'm willing to expand. I'm willing to be course corrected. I'm willing to do the work now so I don't get those, right? Big towers coming down in my life. And if they do come into my life, because they will, right? They do come into my life, it's going to be my positive attitude. It's going to be all those lessons. It's going to be all those mindset tools and things that I've picked up along the way that's going to help me to get through it, right? And that's the truth. And I'd like to maybe be that example for my sister Tracy for the next I think few weeks at the very least. Um okay. Cindy, you look young, like you could be in your 50s. You look young. I'm going to be 65 years old today, or not today, in a few more months. In a few more months. We're not going to rush it. My late father, too, grew up on a dairy farm and they raised their chickens and planted crops and harvested them. So he got pulled out of the eighth grade to work full time on the farm. Yeah, so you know, Tammy, exactly what I'm talking about there. Like, education wasn't on a high of a priority list like it is now, right? As we move forward, right? The it You're going to need higher grades in order to get into the colleges that you're going to want to get into. It's going to be important. There's going to be certain standards of education. Now, I remember my dad wanted to be a police officer. It was his dream to be a police officer, but you had to be 6 foot 1 inch in order to be a police officer. And my dad was 5'11", so he couldn't be a police officer. I don't know how it's relevant into that conversation, except in the fact that things change, right? Things change. Now it's called discrimination. Now there's lots of short police officers. Uh, in 1611, the King James bought, 16 in 1611, right? So any time before that, the regular man didn't have access to the Bible, right? So any lessons that they picked up, picked it up from the priest, right? Or the pastor on the pulpit, right? And yeah, it is interesting and it's fantastic, right? That as a regular man, that we get to have a voice, we get to have a choice, right? A voice, a choice. What rhymes with that? Give me something else. Right? Because that might be a good lesson for us that somebody could put that into a quote or something. But a voice and a choice, that's really, really quite incredible for people who never, right, for the most part, grew up feeling they didn't matter except for what they can contribute to their community, right? Yeah. Cindy, you are a good entrepreneur and you're a very good YouTuber. Yeah. That's just going to my head there, Tammy. I appreciate that you say that. Puts a smile on my face, right? Because in that entrepreneurship, as a reseller, I haven't sold anything this week, not one thing. I did get a couple of really neat things. I got a Hudson Bay blanket to sell. And me and my sister went thrifting, and we got a cuckoo clock, a real cuckoo clock. And when I looked at them online, some go for 500, but I've seen this exact same cuckoo clock go for $1,200. Now this cuckoo clock doesn't have the weights on the chain, so the weights went missing on it, but the cuckoo clock itself is in brand new condition. I said, well, how am I going to know if this cuckoo clock works? I took my screwdriver and wrapped ribbon around it, so that was a weight, and I put it on the hook. And then I went and I got some big serving spoon stuff, and I hooked them onto the hook. That was another weight. And then the third weight, what did I put on that one? I put something on it. I can't remember what it was. It was something really, really heavy. I'm just going to take a look here. Screwdriver, cutlery. Yeah, can't remember what the other one was. And then it worked. It ticked. It had the little wheel that went around where the people, like the little German women and men, and up in the what's that movie? Sound of Music, right? The Sound of Music. Those people on that wheel, and it went around and had a cuckoo where the window opened up and the cuckoo came up on the hour and on the half hour too. So it was pretty neat. It's in perfect condition. I don't know what I'm going to sell it for. It doesn't have the weights. I looked on Marketplace and I found some weights for $60. I might phone them and see if they can haggle me down, so I can get them for maybe $30. And if I can get them for $30, I might put it up for $500. And it was less than $10 we got it for. So that was pretty good. That's entrepreneurship, right? Yeah. But it's only worth what somebody's willing to pay for it. And that's the truth. Voice and choice, but I want one more word that rhymes with voice and choice, but something motivational. I'm going to write that down here because it sounds really good, and it sounds like something that I could use in a motivational message for sure. Um, well, it's Thursday, Cindy. You got a couple of more days and nights left to have a buyer for your things that you sell. Someone could still buy something yet this week. That's true too. Keep that positive attitude. Actually, tomorrow, the government of Canada has sent everybody out a little check. I know we live in a great country. It's not much. It's a few $100s, right? But a few $100s to every household going on in Canada, that adds up to a lot of money, right? And I think it's actually for the low incomes. So it's not for everybody. So if you make lots of money, if you make $100,000 a year, you won't get it. But if you have a family, you can make like $700. Um, Me just being single, I'm just going to get under $300, and I'm going to pay my house bills with that money tomorrow. Hopefully, have $10 left over to buy a flat of eggs, because a flat is one of the big things. I eat a lot of eggs, right? I eat 3 eggs a day. That's my protein. So I eat 3 eggs a day, and so I buy those flats, and they're like 30 eggs on a flat, right? So I need to buy a flat of eggs. But I'm gonna pay my house bills. With that, all of that money go right to my house bills. Today I bought some groceries that'll tie me over for a little while, and we wait until we sell something, right? And we are doing fantastic, you guys, right? It's not things are always cotton candies and rainbows. We all struggle emotionally, mentally, physically, financially, right? We all do. And if we can just keep the sunshine there a little bit, that softness there, right? We can't always be smiling, and we shouldn't always be smiling, especially when life is painful, right? But it's in our attitudes. It really is in our attitudes. Okay, you guys, let's grab card. Let's have a sip of my coffee. And I wasn't going to buy coffee, and I bought a tin of coffee today because the coffee went on sale, right? So I bought a big tin of coffee, so I'm good for coffee for another month, which means I'm going to have to buy some sweetener too. I use sweetener in my coffee, right? I try to stay away from the sugar. I'm not always good at that, but yeah. My food challenges are still there, right? I've overcome. I'm proud of what I've been able to overcome in my coping mechanisms. I'm grateful for that. But, that one, and being able to sit here and sit in lectures and knowing nobody's staring at me and I can eat. And if I can eat, I can think at the same time, right? Yeah. But that one will go too, right? And then we're good to go, you guys. Okay. Ah, that was a good day today. I'm glad I went over to my sister's. It was a little heartbreaking to see the condition that she was in. She was in pretty rough shape, but I think it was more emotional than physical. I really do think that. I think her emotion kind of affected her physically, so kind of helped her out the best that I could. We had a nice little visit, right? Okay, you guys. Here we go. And thank you, Tammy. I appreciate that you give her a little prayer. I'm going to voice something. I did voice something to take care of her today, but I'll be more specific tonight before I go to bed. Here we go. Maybe it's pertinent to the conversation. Maybe it's not. Integrity. There you go, you guys. I'll put that there. Thumbnail. Integrity is the examples that others will follow, right? So I'm going to be genuine in that process when I'm spending that time with my sister, right? Rather than being preachy, lectury, right? Be critical in, how she's handling it. I will just be the example for her. The example, right? The examples that others will follow. I, right? Whether I don't want her following me, but be her own example for herself, right? That she can do a little self parenting for herself, not get herself out of that survival mode. That's the first agenda. I will help her in that, but with no expectations in that. Just give her a little bit of a kickstart so she can take over on her own. Integrity, you guys. That's all I've got for you tonight. I will be back tomorrow. Thank you so much, Tammy, for coming in and keeping me company and your insights, right? I just love, I don't know. Um, Right? I don't know if you've talked to your brother that sometimes you mention his challenges and stuff, right? Um, it's lovely that you shared those examples to us. If you have the opportunity, that I said thank you for that. That would be amazing. I would appreciate that. But like I said, that's it for tonight, you guys. I'll be back tomorrow. Have a great night.